welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies might have inspired it. And today on the show, we're talking about It Was Just an Accident, a new film that was put out by Neon and is a pretty strong contender for the Best International Picture this coming year, but also a great movie, and we got a lot to get into with it. So joining me, we've got Paul Hibbard. We talk a lot about some great puzzle pieces, but also get into Iranian cinema and all kinds of interesting stuff. So fun conversation coming up. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at PiecingPod, and don't forget to join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. And with that said, let's talk about It Was Just an Accident. Paul Hibbard is with us to talk about It Was Just an Accident. How's it going, Paul?
Great, David. How are you doing?
I'm all right. We're both doing a lot better than Jafar Panahi is doing right now. I mean, that's for sure.
Yeah, with the getting sentenced, and it's crazy because he said he's actually going to go back and serve too. And because when I first heard that, I was like, oh, well, I mean, don't worry, just stay here. And it's not like we have a president who deports people home. So, but for the most part, you're like, oh, you're probably safe here. But then he's like, nope, all I know is Iran, and I'm just going to go home and serve the sentence.
I mean, if nothing else, hopefully it gives him some ideas for his next film, because this one's a really good one, and I'm really looking forward to talking about it, that's for sure.
Yeah, this was a good one, and I've always thought that his what I consider to be his masterpiece, which was the first film I saw from him, it was the film called This Is Not a Film, and I never thought that he would do better than that, and I think he might have with this one, in my opinion.
Right on. Well, let's just start getting into some puzzle pieces. I know that we'll have a lot of directions to get into while figuring out what might have inspired this thing, but let's just start jumping right into it. What do you have for your first puzzle piece for It Was Just an Accident?
So the first one, which I kind of put on Letterboxd, I know you saw it on Letterboxd as a joke, but I honestly think it is sort of a joke, but there is some truth to it also. I put It Chapter 2 because I liked this idea of you had this monster from the past who came back, and there's a group of people who've had interactions with him in the past, and they have basically vowed if they ever find him again, they're going to do something about it. And what really reminded me is you had the couple who were getting married, and that reminded me of It Chapter 2, where you had these people who had gone from kids to living very civilized lives and being members of society, but they didn't care. This was their vow if they ever found this guy to do this. And I thought about that with her running around in the wedding dress the whole time, being like, it doesn't matter where we are now, this guy needs his punishment. So it was one of those jokes.
It's funny, it's hilarious, but it really does fit really well. You're absolutely right, because that whole idea of these people, they knew each other, they've grown apart, and they've gone on with their lives despite all of the trauma and all that stuff. They've built some kind of a life for themselves, but now they have to be kind of torn right back into where they left from. I mean, that literally is exactly what It Chapter 2 is all about, and it fits really well here. So as ridiculous as it is, I think it's a great puzzle piece to kick us off with. I'm just going to jump all around with my pieces, because I don't know what I'm doing here, but I have quite a few to bring up. I'm going to start with Blue Ruin. Jeremy Saulnier's Blue Ruin, a revenge movie that's really about revenge just not working out very well. And in this movie, like you were saying, these people, for anyone who hasn't seen It Was Just an Accident, obviously we'll be getting into lots of spoilers, but these people have, through random circumstances, come into contact with the guy who might have tortured them during wartime or whatever, earlier before the events of the movie. And they are going to get their revenge on this guy if he actually is who they think he is. And they need to kind of convince themselves before they, do something to him that this is the guy. And with Blue Ruin, you've got this person who is just so hell-bent on the idea of getting revenge that it just takes him down. It
Mhm.
really just completely ruins his life in the process of getting that revenge. And the idea of like violence begets violence and all that kind of stuff. And like, is it worth it to even go after something, even though it's haunted you and it's like become just this major part of your personality ever since whatever wrong was done upon you. That's something that like weighs heavy over both of these movies.
Yeah, I agree. And to build on that one, I have one that is also about revenge. But what I think makes it a little bit different than your piece, which is a really good piece, but I think what makes it a little bit different is it has to do with the government and what it is to get revenge in under a state that is built on corruption. And it's the Argentina film, The Secret in Their Eyes, that came out in
Mm,
2009. And that is a film also about someone trying to wrong a right of the past. That one has to do with a rape, and they're trying to get revenge. But it asks a question that I was thinking the whole time while I was watching this movie: is can these guys or this group of people can they get revenge in any way that is justified under a country that is ran by a dictatorship? Like when you live in a country with a dictatorship, there's no way to get revenge in any sort of like fair, justified way. It has to be the way they're trying to do it, which is like this very like brutal, almost like sickening. And it feels sickening when you're watching the movie if you don't know, or when you don't know if they have the right guy or not. It feels really
mm,
sickening, and in the means that they're going to, it almost makes them possibly villains for a
sure.
large portion of the times, along with them maybe not having the right person, but also the means of why they're doing this. But like, what other choice do they have in a country like that where they there's no other option. There's no other option besides doing this really brutal form of revenge. And that becomes a question that obviously is answered in the end. And I mean, I guess we can get into full spoilers where they don't actually do it, because of the decaying effect of who they are. But like much like Secret in Their Eyes, those are the two choices. You either you become brutal or you just walk away from the whole thing. There's no other, nothing else in between.
Yeah, and I think that that's the interesting thing about a movie like this or Secret in Your Eyes is like that's not something that we usually even consider. Like we
Yeah.
consider the immediate effects of dictatorships and like having somebody that's like a freaking tyrant running the country and
Hmm.
there's no like getting around it, but the long lasting domino effect of like what it does to people living under that and how they make choices going forward, and those are things that I don't think most of us like really even consider at any point. And so a movie like this really kind of sheds a light on like, well, later on after these things start to happen, where does that where does that go? And how do things just continue to spiral and get worse from
Hmm.
there?
And I really love how this film asks the question at the end: did they make the right choice? But I think it's a twofold question. First of all, did they make the right choice in a moral sense? Like, would they have been just as bad if they did that? But then it also asks the question if they made the right choice in a safety stance. Like, have they
Mm,
allowed a monster still to be out there that who can now do this to them? And
yeah.
it is such a perfect ending because I don't know the answer. I don't know if
Yeah.
they made the right choice or not.
Yeah. Well, I think an obvious and easy to include puzzle piece, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. One that has very moral ambiguity in everything baked into every layer of the movie. I'm going with Parasite as a puzzle piece here. A movie in which everyone in the situation essentially has the capability of being bad.
Hmm.
There's no real good answer to any of this. Like, if they get their revenge in this movie, it was just an accident. That's kind of bad still. Like, even if we're
Hmm.
gonna like say this guy did everything that they think he did and he is this awful person, it's still bad. And like that guy is bad and everyone's freaking bad. And like that's really kind of like the beauty really of Parasite is that everyone's kind of shitty in that movie. And that's what like really just makes it layered and makes it bring up a lot of really interesting conversation around it and like what you see in these characters and these people and their predicaments.
Yeah, and to stay in Korea, I just thought of this piece. I didn't have this plan, but Old Boy stuck out
Sure.
to me too as another film about the path of revenge. But to kind of contrast it with um, Old Boy still makes it. You know, it kind of has the message that and a lot of films will have a message where if you get revenge on someone, dig 2 graves because you're essentially digging one for yourself, or
Sure.
whatever messages. But a lot of times films will kind of have that message as sort of like almost like a perfunctory form of lecturing, but it doesn't feel like it in the film. Like a lot of times, like somebody will get this really cool revenge on someone, and then there's kind of this tacked on message at the end where it's like, you shouldn't have done that because now you're destroyed. But it still feels really exciting while they're doing it. What I loved about this one was that the revenge, even when he admitted who he was, it felt ugly. It's one of the first revenge films where the decision of whether they should do it or not wasn't just something the film was saying. It was something I was feeling in the characters, and I was feeling as a viewer also.
Yeah,
So,
no, absolutely. And yeah, and Old Boy is also one that I was thinking about as well. It definitely fits in here really well. You know what? I'm going to throw in right now one that we had kind of joked about in advance of this conversation, but I really do feel like it fits really well here, and that's Little Miss Sunshine, the little Sundance movie that could. But there is a lot of this movie where it's just almost this weird little found family of misfits riding around in a van and kind of driving each other nuts and going crazy and like not knowing how to handle the situation that they've gotten themselves into. And there are moments in this that really do kind of feel like a much heavier Little Miss Sunshine in a way. That's one that you were thinking about as well, right?
yeah, I was, and I know we talked about it, but when I was thinking more about it, and it fits great, and it is funny that we both had that in our mind, because when we said it to each other, we were like, we both thought of it, but at least I was like, does this fit into like an Iranian film? Like,
Could this possibly have inspired this movie?
Yeah, it feels like such a different world. But I was thinking after we talked about it that one thing I love about this film is the mixture of it's the mixture of comedy with I would say the economic despair, or just what it's like being somebody living in Iran, living under a government that controls you the way that you do. And there is a scene in a film that isn't played for comedy, like Little Miss Sunshine, that has people chasing after a vehicle in that same way. And I thought of it because it's a very bleak film. It's one of the greatest films ever. It's Bicycle Thieves. And I was thinking about that because there's a scene towards the beginning after his bicycle is stolen, and he is chasing after a vehicle, and it really like I think gets the point across about what it's like in Italy having a vehicle versus not having one, and how a bicycle being stolen is not just what it is to people who live in rich countries. When your bicycle is stolen, your whole livelihood is gone. And I feel like that scene kind of set that up. So when they were pushing the van in this film, I was thinking it was funny, but it was also like, these are the people and this is where they are in everyday life, and they're the ones trying to get revenge. It just kind of made the revenge feel like more of like an uphill battle, I thought.
I think the question we have to ask is, did the Bicycle Thieves inspire Little Miss Sunshine?
That's very likely it did not.
Yeah.
No. Bicycle Thieves probably inspired this much more. Like Little Miss Sunshine is the outlier there in the middle.
Yeah, I think so. All right, let's see. Let's go. All right, so one thing that this movie I kept thinking about, because obviously I saw this movie, I got a screener for it, end of the year, awards consideration, and it's won at Cannes, and it's going to be a big contender for international film at the Oscars. And I like this movie a lot, but at the same time, I kept thinking, and I made a mention of this in my Letterboxd review, that it really just reminds me of the kind of down and dirty thrillers that we would see in like the late 90s into the early 2000s that didn't need all of that conversation around them. They're just really good, solid thrillers. And I was trying to think of like what one it fits the best with of that kind of specific subgenre. And I went with Sam Raimi's A Simple Plan, which is totally a different kind of movie. But I mean, the idea of these people, they find this money, it's a very simple story, and it just tears them apart trying to figure out what to do with it. And that's basically what we've got here. A very simple movie about a group of people who find themselves in this situation where they can do this thing, but that thing is now tearing them all apart and they can't decide what to do with it. So I think it's similar in some ways, but more so in just that vibe of like that just simple down and dirty genre kind of story that is a really fun watch, and that's basically what it is.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Um, to bounce off that and make this really unnecessarily art housey, I was thinking of films that use static photography. So that could be because that is what he does so well in this. I am just going to. I'm sure this is very indicative of who I am because I think Michael Haneke's the greatest filmmaker ever. But I will
Mm,
just say him because he just has like scenes play out in long static shots, and it's so invigorating. It reminds me of a quote. I think it was Truffaut who said, "Every cut's a lie," and I
mm,
was thinking about that while I was watching this film too, and especially that scene where he's tied to the tree, and there is almost like, I mean, as much as I love that kind of static shooting, there is like a part of me that's like suffocating in the tension because there's been no cuts and this is like
yeah.
one long take, and I just love the way that he filmed that. And I think relatively familiar with his film work, but not I don't think so much to the point that I can identify his shots very well. But when I think of his films in the past, I think a lot of times of just people write. I mean, a lot of Iranian films, I just think about people riding in cars because they're really not allowed to be out doing stuff. So they're like in the cars having conversations driving around. And that's what I think of a lot of his films too. And this is one where he was allowed to have some more money and he had a little bit more freedom because they have a president now who's a little bit more of a reformist. So I think the combination of that allowed him to get out and really kind of flex his muscle about what he could do with these really controlled shots, and I thought it was incredible. It's a reason I love the film so much is the way it's done.
Yeah, and there's a really great sense of where they are and how it's kind of isolated, but at the same time, we're still getting a look at a place that we maybe don't always get to see in film, and so it's kind of giving us a really interesting place to put that camera on. And then, of course, shots like you said of him tied to the tree, like where it's just really just forcing you to like be there and know that there's nothing safe anywhere out there, even if he was to get out of there. Like
Yeah.
it's some pretty crazy stuff. But I've got only one more piece here, so I'm just gonna go for it, and that's Richard Kelly's The Box. Um, it's such a not very good movie, but the idea of you push this button, you get $1 million, but someone dies, and the whole movie was kind of built around the idea. I feel like to start conversations about like, well, what would you do? What would you do? What would you do? And like this feels like one of those kinds of movies where it's like it's giving you this moral dilemma, and you're gonna get a very different answer from anyone who answers that question of how they would handle this. And that's true of everybody in the movie, all the characters in the movie, but any viewer of the movie is also going to be coming from a very different place in how they approach it. I think there's other, examples. Just right now, I thought of Gone Baby Gone as another example of that kind of a movie that kind of gives you that big moral dilemma and what would you do in that situation. That's a much better movie, so maybe I should do Gone Baby Gone instead of The Box. But either one,
I mean, I did it chapter 2, so
yeah,
it
sure.
fits in.
Yeah.
Okay, that one's very good. I think my last piece is is kind of just like the whole state of Iranian filmmaking and how there is like this difference between the filmmakers who are there. And if you want like a Western example, I think of like filmmakers that have kind of had the path that he has had, where he has lived the experiences that he is making. So he was part of the Iran-Iraq War, and that's how he kind of got his start when he was like 19 years old. So a lot of these things that he's talking about in these films are just very like straight on examples of things that he has dealt with. And then he got his start in film. Panahi got his start with Kiarostami, so he was working as an
Mm.
assistant director for him. So that's kind of how it was like this always on the ground learning everything that he learns. Like I'm sure he has a great cinematic education, but so much of what he knows is what he has learned on the ground. And now he's part of the protest there. of people who are anti the Ayatollahs and are for women's rights, and he is on the ground protesting. And so I have a filmmaker friend who is Iranian. He's actually in Iran to this day. He was part of my festival. I I was going to say his name, but then I thought about it. I probably shouldn't, just in case. I don't know how dangerous it would be. But
Mm.
he was talking about the Iranian filmmakers there, and I guess I mean the wider thing is Iranian filmmaking, but I guess you can call the more specific puzzle piece I'm going to talk about is Seed of the Sacred Fig, because he
Okay.
was talking about how what Panahi does, what he does as opposed to the director of Seed of the Sacred Fig, Rusloff, the difference about what they do is Panahi is actually on the ground and he's at the protest. He's making films about this. And my friend, he's a protester. He's a leftist in Iran. Apparently, a lot of them took a lot of exception to what Rusloff did with Seed of the Sacred Fig, which, as a Westerner watching it, I thought it was a masterpiece. But they looked at this guy who was not supporting the protest. He was not down there working, but he was using footage of protest to make his films
Mm.
kind of hit in ways that he personally was not supporting. And a few of them also looked at his trek from Iran to France as kind of a showy thing for someone
Mm.
who hasn't earned that. Now, when I think about it, I don't think I think it's more of a testament of how great Panahi is and how he believes in what he makes films about, as opposed to like Rusloff, because what he does is, maybe you could say, the same thing that maybe Paul Thomas Anderson does. He's making movies that has to do with politics, but he's not necessarily on the ground down there fighting. So
Right.
I think it's okay that you don't. I think it's okay to make films if you're not directly involved with it, but if you are the kind of filmmaker who is directly involved with it, I feel like that is, I think, more of a testament to who you are as a filmmaker, and you should be given more credit for that too. And that is, it was just interesting learning about the country and how these different filmmakers, who I think are both gods of the country, are viewed, and how Panahi is actually viewed by the young people, the leftists of Iran, as one of their
It,
people.
yeah, it's a valid criticism, but at the same time, it's like if somebody's making a really good movie, that's going to get a lot more eyes on those issues.
Yeah.
That is its own form of activism, and I think people need to kind of get over it a little bit, you know?
Yeah, that's what I said to him. I was like, I think it's a great film. I don't think what he did was wrong. I can see maybe it could be viewed as exploitative, but I thought it was still effective, and I thought that it had its heart in its right place.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Well, I think we got into a lot of really great stuff here. Any closing thoughts? Anything else about it was just an accident you want to mention before we wrap this up?
I loved it, and it might be the only film this year that I have above One Battle After Another.
Mm.
When it comes, usually I put my top list together, and then I actually like figure it out. Then I try not to think about it too much ahead of time, but I feel like if I was to make it today, this would be my number one film of the year.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, I'm glad we got you on the episode for that one then, because that's pretty freaking awesome. Yeah, no, I thought it was great too, and I love a morally dubious movie. You know, that's like
Mhm.
that always is something that's really, regardless of what the topic is at hand, regardless of where it comes. Like, I just love something where you could kind of chew on it and really think about, you know, is this right? Is this wrong? Should they go this way? Should they go that way? And really, there's no answer because there isn't an answer. And that
Mhm.
really is what makes something really interesting because then you can really just sit with it. And I think the ending we didn't really like mention, but the ending I think is one of those things that I feel like it gives film nerds something where they can get really
Do,
excited about, you know.
and I was going to ask you about that. Do you think it's paranoia, or do you think it was really happening?
Personally, I think it's paranoia. Like
Mhm.
that's how I read it, but at the same time, who knows, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah. So anybody who hasn't seen the movie, watch it and let us know.
Yeah,
But
I would love to hear feedback on that.
yeah, definitely for sure. Well, Paul, is there another movie you watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
I saw at the St. Louis International Film Festival. I saw a movie called The Plague, which I love. It is coming out soon. Maybe it's come out already. I'm not sure. But it is very Kubrickian in the best ways, and it is about a kid being bullied, and at a school, at a swim school that he goes to. And what I love so much about it is it is about bullying, but it is the filmmaking of horror just makes the bullying look horrible. There isn't like big things happening. There's not like any huge allegories happening in the film. It's not elevated horror in the way that like these big metaphor horrors are coming at you. It's really just to the point where I see people criticizing it as in like nothing's really happening in this movie, but it is. It's very minute stuff, and there's a kid being bullied badly. But if you remember what it was like being bullied, if you were bullied when you were younger, it felt like hell. And I felt like this is one of the first movies that use the power of filmmaking to express how terrible it is.
Maybe we could use It Chapter 1 as a puzzle piece. On
We
this one.
should. I really sold that as a really fun sounding movie, didn't I? So.
Paul, where can people find you, your film fest, your film work, everything you're up to?
Yeah, just basically my film festival is the thing I promote the most. So find that on Instagram, Facebook. It's Hysteria Fest. We're in the off season right now, but we're already planning stuff for the summer, and it is going to be big and awesome. If you're a filmmaker and you make horror, send me your movies. I'd love to see them.
Awesome. Well, Paul, great to do this one with you, and we'll talk to you again sometime soon.
Cool. Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about It Was Just an Accident. Thank you to Paul Hibbard for joining me on that one, and thank you to all of you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed. You can also follow us on social media at PiecingPod. And don't forget, we do have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, Awesome Movie Year, and from my music career. Lots of great stuff over there at patreon.com/bydavidrosen. You are supporting the show by listening and by sharing and by commenting with your puzzle pieces and by clicking like buttons and all those things. But you could also support the show in the Patreon way if you would like to continue to support what I do. So, with that said, let's close this out with a piece of my music like I always do. And, well, it was just an accident. There was a song on my latest album. It was called Careless, so I'm going to go with that. I guess it fits. This is from my album Missing Pieces, which came out at the beginning of 2025, and I swear I will be finishing my next real... This album Missing Pieces was more of like an in-between album. My next real, full-length, like serious David Rosen album, it's on the way. It's going to happen. You will be hearing more about it soon, but... This is from that in-between album called Missing Pieces. So, hope you enjoy it, and we will be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
an All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.